Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Inshallah, we will now be having our dars in the month of Ramadan. Today is the dars number 14th during the month of Ramadan, and I will continue with some of the things that I was not able to mention yesterday about the topic of finding pleasure in our salat. And then majority of the dars I will spend in answering some of the questions I have received yesterday and in the last few days about the topic of fitrana, fidya and zakat. So inshallah we will start now. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So first of all, I would like to finish from where we left off yesterday, because I felt that yesterday, because of lack of time in the end, I had to go very fast and I was not able to give proper attention to some of the things that I was mentioning yesterday about finding pleasure in salat. So just to give a quick summary of what was presented yesterday, that number one, that the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala has put pleasure in every single thing in the world, especially in His worship. And Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ has explained that the fact that we cannot find pleasure in our salat, or we cannot find pleasure in worship, it's not because there is no pleasure in it. The reason for that is that we have been affected by, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ calls it the poison of sin. That because of that poison, we cannot feel that pleasure. And Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ gave the example of a person who is sick, that when he is sick, he could not even taste something which is delicious, and even the delicious things, sweet things, taste bitter to him. So Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ has explained that for us to find pleasure in our salat, we need to fix the taste, the sense of taste, or we need to fix whatever illness is causing us to not feel pleasure in it. Then Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ also explained to us that once we are not finding any pleasure in salat, it should not be that we stop praying altogether, or it should not be that we are not giving any attention to the reading of the Holy Quran and the salat. Rather, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ gave the example of a drunkard person, that when he starts drinking, in his mind he has a state which he wants to reach. So a person who goes to a bar, he knows that he wants to get drunk to that extent. Some people want to get just a little bit drunk so they can enjoy it. Some people want to get extremely drunk. So whatever state is, a person will continue to drink until he reaches that point. So as Masih Maud ﷺ said, we can find lessons to learn even from such examples. And this example teaches us that if we are not finding pleasure in our salat, it should not be that we should stop altogether, but rather we should continue to pray as much as possible, and we should try to spend as much time in our salat as possible, and then inshallah Allah will give us the reward for that. One of the quotations regarding finding pleasure in salat, which I was not able to mention yesterday, I will present it today in front of you. Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, Imam Mahdi ﷺ, he writes, this is when he has done the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha. So under the verse of Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in, he writes, some people say that they do not find pleasure in salat, but I tell you that he should offer it again and again and do it abundantly. There is a constriction in the beginning of righteousness, that once a person starts walking on the path of righteousness, there is difficulty in the beginning. As Masih Maud ﷺ has used the word qabd. Qabd means your heart feels constrained, it does not find pleasure in it. At that time, the person should repeat, Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in. That, oh Allah, Thee alone do we worship, and Thee alone do we implore for help, again and again. The meaning of that is, at that time person should say that, oh Allah, I want to worship you, I am new to this path, but I need your help. Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ has mentioned at another place that without the help of Allah, it is impossible to find pleasure in salat. So that is why Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ said in the beginning, when a person is suffering from this condition, he should repeat the word Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in, Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in as much as possible. Then Promised Messiah ﷺ goes on to say, in vision, that Sufiya have been shown in vision that Satan is shown as a thief or a robber. Shaitan is shown in the form of a robber or a thief. As the Masih said, a person who is praying, he should file a plea, a court case against him in the court of Allah. So if Shaitan is bothering you and Shaitan is not allowing you to find pleasure in Salat, Imam Mahdi has said that a person should file a case against Shaitan in the court of Allah. Now this goes back to the example I had given you yesterday of a Sufi saint who had mentioned that if you go to a friend's house and the dog keeps on attacking you, what will you do? And you will shoo the dog away a few times, you will push him away a few times, but if it keeps on attacking you, what will you do? You will call your friend and you will tell your friend, please tie up your dog. So Promised Messiah Islam is explaining the same thing in a different way, that if Shaitan keeps on bothering you during your Salat, you should file a case against Shaitan in the court of Allah. That, oh Allah, this robber is after me, this thief is after me, he wants to do a hold up against me. We implore thee for help. Iyaka nasta'in. We do not have control over ourselves. Shaitan keeps on attacking us. So Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in. Those who plead with Allah and do not get tired of that, they are given a certain strength from Allah which kills the Shaitan. Remember the hadith of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which I presented yesterday, that Allah has put a Shaitan and Malaika, an angel and jinn, with every single person. Sahaba asked, O Prophet of Allah, even with you? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, yes, even with me. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, but due to the help of Allah, my Shaitan has become a Muslim. He has submitted to me and he only asks me to do good. So as the Masih Maud al-Islam is saying, that those who plead with Allah and do not get tired of it, they keep on praying to Allah that, oh Allah, we cannot find pleasure in Salat, please help us. Shaitan is bothering us again and again, please help us. And they do not get tired of this. They keep on trying. Remember the quotation of Promised Messiah Islam from yesterday, where he gave the example of digging a well. That if you get tired, you will have nothing. If you get tired after digging 10 feet, you have spent your energy in digging that amount, and in the end you don't have any water. But those people who continue till the end, they're able to get to water, and their actions and their work is being rewarded by Allah. Those who do not get tired of that, they are given a certain strength from Allah which kills their Shaitan. But to attain this strength and to present this plea to Allah also demands a certain pain and fervor. Now this is a cycle. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Sufiya, Mufassirin, those who have written commentaries of the Holy Quran, they have argued about this. Why does Iyaka na'budu comes before Iyaka nasta'in? Why does worship comes before help? Because as I mentioned earlier, we cannot even worship without the help of Allah. And the answer that has been given by the Promised Messiah ﷺ is that in the beginning Allah demands that there must be some sort of try from us. And once we try, then Allah will help. And through help of Allah we can try more. And then we get more help. So it's a cycle. That is what Promised Messiah ﷺ has mentioned here, that to present this plea to Allah, that to ask Allah for help, also demands a pleasure, also demands a pain and a fervor. So it is almost a cycle that we don't find pain and fervor in our Salat. So we ask Allah for help. But to ask Allah for help continuously, we need pain and fervor. So how do we get that? Promised Messiah Islam explains further, demands a pain and fervor which can only be achieved with the thought of a robber who is after you and is about to steal everything from you and make you naked and bring about you the same trial which was brought upon Hazrat Adam ﷺ. That we will have this pain to pray to Allah only when we have this thought in our mind that if we that there is a Shaitan, there is a robber, there is a person who is about to rob us, there is a hold-upper who is coming after us. Only then we will have this pain in our heart and we will be able to pray. So just imagine from your own life. If you know that there is a robber or a thief in your area, how many things we do? We make sure that our door is locked up properly. We make sure that we inform the police. We put up CCTV cameras, etc., etc. So this thought has to be there. Imam Mahdi is explaining that Shaitan is a thief, Shaitan is a robber, and he's after you. And if you do not, and if he gets to you, he will take everything away from you. Hazrat Masih Maud said, he will make you naked. He will not only steal your money and your watch and your cell phone, he will even take your clothes, and he will not leave anything with you. So Promised Messiah is saying, when you will have this thought that shaitan is after me and he will put me through the same trial which he put Hazrat Adam through, then you will have this pain in your heart. Like I mentioned, if you know that there's a thief in your area, you will sometimes stay up at night. If there's even a small sound, you will wake up in the middle of the night and, oh, maybe it's the thief, maybe it's a robber. So unless we have this idea, this thought in our mind that shaitan is after us, he's about to steal the pleasure of salat from us, we will not have this pain in our heart. Promised Messiah said, when a person has this realization, then automatically his soul will cry out, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. When we have this in our mind, that shaitan is after us, shaitan wants to steal our iman away from us, then our soul will cry out that, oh Allah, we have no other help except for you. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. So this is a small summary of what I had presented yesterday about pleasure of salat. I wanted to present this quote in front of you. We should recite Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Oh Allah, only you do we worship and only you do we ask for help, again and again in our salat, to find pleasure in our salat. Now I will stop here because I received many questions recently about the topic of fitrana, fidya and zakat. So I would like to start talking about those things today, and maybe if I'm not able to finish, I will continue on this topic. And if there are any further questions, you can either message me directly or you can leave a comment under this video. So first, let's do something which is the most simple one, fitrana. Fitrana is also called sadqatul fitr. In Philippines, I've also heard the term zakatul fitr being used. So zakatul fitr is compulsory upon every Muslim. Even a 1-year-old baby has to pay zakatul fitr. This was the commandment of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is obligatory upon every Muslim, even if he is a 1-day-old baby. Now, what is the rate of zakatul fitr? Zakatul fitr or sadqatul fitr or fitrana is 1 sa. During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a measurement called sa, which is equal to 2.5 kg. So fitrana is equal to 2.5 kg of the staple food. So during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, zakatul fitr or sadqatul fitr could be paid in the form of 2.5 kilo or 1 sa of dates, or 2.5 kilo of barley, or 2.5 kilo of wheat. Okay, but in Islamic jurisprudence in fiqh, zakatul fitr is 2.5 kilo of staple food. So if we calculate based on dates, which was very common in Arabia, but it's not common in the Philippines, the rate will become very high. I think the rate of dates in Philippines is around 700 peso per kilo. So it will become 1750 peso for each person. But the dates is not the staple food of the Philippines. So in the Philippines, we have calculated zakatul fitr based on rice, because rice is the staple food of the Philippines. So our zakatul fitr, as said by Jamaat Ahmadiyya, is only 100 peso based on the price of 2.5 kilo of rice. So every Ahmadi has to pay every Muslim has to pay and every Ahmadi, because the amount has been set by Jamaat, has to pay 100 peso as zakatul fitr or sadqatul fitr. And that, as I said before, this is not only for earning people. Even a 1-day-old baby, you have to pay fitrana, zakatul fitr for that. What is the purpose of fitrana? What is the purpose of sadqatul fitr? The same money is then given back to the community, to the poor people, to the needy people, so that they can also enjoy Eid al-Fitr. They can also enjoy the month of Ramadan. So it's better that you pay your zakatul fitr, your fitrana, early as possible. Zakatul fitr or fitrana has to be paid before the day of the Eid al-Fitr. Some people wait till the day of Eid and then they will pay on the morning thereof. That is also okay, but that is the last chance to pay. Zakatul fitr must be paid before the salat of Eid. So that is fitrana, also known as zakatul fitr or sadaqatul fitr. I hope that is clear. So it's based on 2.5 kilo of rice. In the Philippines, Jamaat has set the amount of 100 peso. Number 2 is, second question I was asked about fidya. What is fidya? Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran about Ramadan, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيدًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ وَأَنْ تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. That whosoever from among you is sick or is on a journey shall fast the same number of other days. And for those who are able to fast only with great difficulty, it is an fidya, it is an expiation, the feeding of a poor man. And whoso performs a good work with willing obedience, it is better for him, and fasting is good for you if you only knew. Now fidya, I've read this verse of the Holy Quran to explain to you that fidya is a commandment of Allah Ta'ala. It is not something that I have set up, it is not something that someone else has set up. Fidya is the commandment of Allah Ta'ala. Fidya is to given by those people who cannot fast during the month of Ramadan, for either because they are sick or because they are traveling. Now, sick people are of two types. One who are categorized under the category of permanently sick, and those who are temporarily sick. A permanently sick person, let me give you an example, that a person who has very high level of diabetes, for example, an old person, he has very high level of diabetes. Now it's an uncurable disease. If it has reached a point, your diabetes, where you cannot fast because of your diabetes, that means you will not be able to fast this year, you will not be able to fast next year, etc., etc. Okay. So for those people, they only need to pay fidya. They don't have to fast, they don't have to make up their fast anymore after Ramadan is over. The second category is of those people who are temporarily sick. An example of that would be, for example, I wake up in the morning and I have a severe headache, or I wake up in the morning and I have flu, and I think that if I fast, because of my sickness will become double, my sickness will become even more, so I will not fast tomorrow. But then the day after tomorrow I am feeling better, so I will fast again. So that person who left his fasting because of temporary sickness, he has to make up his fast after the month of Ramadan is over. So for example, if I miss 1 or 2 fasts, the same thing also applies to traveler, because traveler also falls in this specific sense, also falls under the category of temporary sick, because you're traveling for 1 day, and then once you are again back to your home, then you have to make up your fast. So those of us who leave any of the fast in the month of Ramadan because we are temporarily sick, we had flu, we had fever, or because we were traveling, number one, we have to make up the equal number of fasts after the month of Ramadan. Whenever we are feeling better, preferably before the next Ramadan, before the Ramadan of next year, we must make up those fasts. For those, now the question is, those people who are making up their fast later on, do they also have to pay fidya? The answer to that, according to the promised Messiah ﷺ, is, he said, one day I contemplated upon the question of fidya. The word used here is وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ, those who have power. So Hazrat Masih Maud said, I thought about why fidya is compulsory upon Islam, and I realized that fidya is given to ask power to fast. So the commandment of Hazrat Masih Maud is that those people who are willing to make up their fast later, they should still pay fidya. They should first pay fidya, and then that fidya will mean their ransom or their expiation or their sadaqah to be given to Allah, to ask for His help, that they will have the power to fast in later days. I hope I'm making this clear, because I want to clarify this as much as possible. That as Masih Maud has written, that even if you're planning to make up your fast afterwards, you're only temporarily sick. Those who are permanently sick, who will not be able to fast later on, only fidya. But if you're temporarily sick and you're planning to make up your fast later, you should still pay fidya, and that fidya will be considered as your plea to Allah, as your request to Allah to grant you the strength to make up the fast which you were not able to perform during the month of Ramadan. Okay? So if you were traveling during this month of Ramadan, or if you're sick for 1 or 2 days and you plan to make up those fasts later, you should still pay fidya. Now the question is, what is the amount of fidya? How much fidya needs to be paid? The amount of fidya, as mentioned in the Holy Quran, in the verse of the Holy Quran I mentioned to you right now, is the feeding of a poor man. So according to fiqh, and as explained especially by the fiqh of Jamaat Ahmadiyya, fidya is based on how you eat on your regular expenses, because different people, they spend different amount of money on their food. I know of many people in our Jamaat who are poor or who cannot afford too much, so their one-time meal is only 50 peso. In 50 peso, they can buy rice and they can buy ulam. So for them, one meal is equal to 50 peso. But then there are other people who are rich. Their food is more. For example, if a person he's eating McDonald's all the time, then McDonald's meal usually in the Philippines is what, around 150 peso, 125 peso. So that person, for him, one meal will be equal to 125 to 150 peso. So a person will judge himself how much is his regular expenses for food, and then he will either give that much amount of money, or he will feed a person according to the same amount. Whatever he eats himself, he will also give the same amount of food to a needy person, to a poor person, or he will give money to a poor person. Now it's not equal to only one meal. It's equal to how much you eat within the day. In some cultures, they eat 2 times a day. In some cultures, they eat 3 times a day. So if you eat 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, and you spend 50 peso per your meal, then your fidya for one fast that you have missed will be 150 peso. That you can give to Jamaat, and Jamaat will distribute it to a poor person, or you yourself directly can give to a poor person or feed a poor person. If you give it to the Jamaat, the better, the benefit is that Jamaat knows those people who are in need, and Jamaat can send to them. For example, I know of a person who's right now is in jail. There's a Muslim brother who's in jail who writes to us again and again, and he's in need of help. Now, majority of the Jamaat members do not know about him, but I know about him because I'm the president of the Jamaat and I get the reports from all of the Jamaats. So if the fidya is paid to the Jamaat, then we can send money to him in the jail so he can buy food, etc., and things like that. So there is benefit, but in paying to the Jamaat. But as far as fidya is concerned, you have a choice. Fitrana has to be paid to the Jamaat. It cannot be given directly to any person. It has to be given to the Jamaat, to the Islamic, if there is Islamic government, to the government, or if, in our case, it must be paid to the Jamaat. Now, I hope that matters of fitrana and fidya are clear. So if you miss 3 fasts, then according to you multiply the number of 150 to 3 times. So if there are any questions about fitrana or fidya, you can leave them in the comments. Number 3 is zakat. I will not be able to finish everything about zakat, so I will only explain to you the basic principle of zakat today, and then I will answer one specific question about zakat which I received yesterday. The basic principle of zakat, before that, in Islam, there are different types of financial sacrifices. Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, in the very beginning, Alladhina alif lam mim dhalikal kitabu la rayba fi hudal lil muttaqin alladhina yu'minuna bil ghaibi wa yuqimuna salata wa mimma razaqnahum yunfiqun. That is the general commandment that Allah has given, that we should spend from what Allah has given to us. Okay. Now this spending is in different ways. One way is giving sadaqah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, if you see a bad dream, give sadaqah. If you are in trouble, give sadaqah. If you want your prayers to be accepted more, give sadaqah. Sadaqah means just is a general term which means charity, alms giving to help people. That is compulsory upon every Muslim according to their own means and according to their own wealth. So one is general, very general term, that we should always be doing charity. We should always be doing some kind of alms giving. You know, humanity first is a form of sadaqah, etc., etc. That is the most general, broad definition. Secondly, Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to announce specific schemes when there was a need. So, for example, we find in I will only give you the most classic example. At the time of the Battle of Tabuk, this is mentioned very clearly in Surah At-Tawbah, which is chapter 9 of the Holy Quran. At that time, because Muslims were going to fight the Roman army, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked for a special financial sacrifice, and he asked everyone, whether a person who is poor or rich, they should give something for the cause of Allah. And that's where we find the example that Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu brought everything that he owned. Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu gave 50% of his income or 50% of his wealth as charity. And some people, it is mentioned about one companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not have any money. He used to be a daily wager. Many of our members are working on daily wage. So those of us who are working on daily wage, there is example for them. That Sahabi, he went on his work, and whatever he earned, he brought 50% home, and the 50% of his daily wage he gave to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were specific schemes for specific targets. In this case, the target was Battle of Tabuk. Similarly, in the Jamaat, we have specific schemes. For example, we have Chanda Aam, Chanda Jalsa Salana, Tahreek Jadeed, Waqf Jadeed. The purpose of Chanda Jalsa Salana is so that we can have our annual convention. The purpose of Tahreek Jadeed is so we can have foreign missions, etc., etc. So those are, so the first was Sadaqah, which is very general. Number two is goal-oriented, you can call them financial sacrifice. That there is a scheme and you need money for that, so that is why you ask for a special case for that. Third is Zakat. Zakat is one of the pillars of Islam. It is compulsory upon every Muslim who meets the conditions of Zakat. Now the question is, what are the conditions of Zakat? Zakat is, the purpose of Zakat, Allah Ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Hashr, the purpose of Zakat is so that the wealth does not keep on rotating among the rich people. You know, there's a very famous, you can idiom in the English language, or a saying in English language, the rich get richer. And we see that is the result of a capitalist society. The rich keep on getting richer and the poor keep on getting poor. So Allah Ta'ala set up the concept of Zakat so that the wealth does not keep on rotating within the rich people. Allah Ta'ala has mentioned this in Surah Al-Hashr, that this is the purpose of Zakat. Now, what is the condition which is met when you have to pay Zakat? This is called Nisab in the Arabic language, or in the Fiqh of Islam. When a person meets the Nisab, he has to pay Zakat. What is Nisab? Nisab is calculated based on silver or gold. Now, there is so much difference between silver and gold prices nowadays that a few years ago, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, this matter was presented to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, and Jamaat decided that the Nisab of Zakat in our Jamaat will be calculated based on gold. So if we calculate, so I will not go into silver anymore because of that. The Zakat, the Nisab of Zakat as per gold is 7.5 tola, which is equal to 3 ounces, which is equal to 87.4 grams. Okay. So if you have 87.4 grams of gold in your, as a jewelry or a gold brick in your house, or if you have money which is equal to 87.4 grams of gold. So I checked this morning, as of this morning in Philippine gold prices, 87.4 grams of gold was coming to be roughly 222,000 pesos. So if you have 222,000 pesos and 1 year passes upon that, what does that mean? This means that, for example, me personally, I calculate my Zakat from Ramzan to Ramzan. So if last Ramzan, my bank balance was 250,000 peso, and throughout the year, even if it went down, it came back up, and at the end of the year, my total income is still 280,000 peso. My bank balance is 280,000 peso. So because I'm over the limit, the Nisab of 222,000, I will have to pay Zakat. Because in the beginning of the year, it was 250, now it's 280. So it remained over the Nisab for 1 year. Even if it went down, it came back up. It doesn't matter if it went down. If it came back up, it still counts. So if your amount remained like this for 1 year, then you have to pay 2.5% of your total savings that you had for 1 year. 1 year must pass upon that income. You must pay 2.5% of that as Zakat. So, in the specific example I am giving, in the beginning I had 250, now I have 280. I will pay Zakat on 280. So 280,000 divided by 40, 7,000. So I will pay 7,000 peso as Zakat. So Zakat, the purpose is those people who are rich, they should not be hoarding their money. Their money should be in circulation. Their money should be helping the poor people also. So again, to explain this again, Zakat is compulsory upon those believers who meet the Nisab of Zakat. Nisab of Zakat is calculated on the basis of gold in our Jamaat, and the basis of gold is 87.4 grams of gold. As of this morning, the price of gold, it was 222,000 peso. So if there are any members of the Jamaat who have had 222,000 pesos for 1 year, they should pay whatever their total saving is, they should pay 1/40th. They should divide their total by 40 or multiply it by 0.025, and that will give them how much zakat they should pay. Now, I was asked a very specific question actually by a non-Ahmadi friend. He asked our Seminole branch, and that question was presented to me, so I will also answer this question right now. The question was, how about our GSIS and SSS and different taxes that the government takes from our check, and if that amount is over 240,000, do we still have to pay zakat? So according to my understanding, the non-Ahmadi ulama gave him a different answer, but according to the non-Ahmadi ulama, the answer that was given to him was that if he has the record of that, and at that amount which is with the government, that is for him, it has reached over the nisab, over 222,000 peso, then he should pay zakat. I personally disagree with that, because that money is not under his control right now. So for me to answer that question, your taxes which are being cut, whether in form of social security or GSIS or pension fund, etc., whatever different taxes which are cut from your pagibig, etc., which are cut from your check, you don't have to pay zakat on them unless that money is returned to you. Now some people, they take all of their retirement wholesome in lump sum. For those people, their pension is usually over this amount. So for those people, when they get their pension money in lump sum, let's say it's 1 million, all of their pension, they get 1 million, they don't have to pay right away. But after 1 year passes on that, then they have to pay on the full 1 million. For example, if 1 million was their retirement or pension, then they should pay on that. So according to my understanding to that specific question, you don't have to pay zakat on the government taxes that are still with the government. You only have to pay taxes once that money is in your control, in your property, and then 1 year passes over that, then you should pay zakat on that. So I hope that question is clear for our Seminole Jamaat also, because this question was asked to me from them. I will, if you have more questions, because I know there are many questions about zakat, just leave them in the comment. Last thing I want to mention, some people asked about house, that I own my home, and my home is worth more than nisab. Nisab is 222,000. So of course, if you own a house, your house is more than that, if you have a proper house. So there is no zakat on the house that you live in. Now, what if you have a house that you don't live in, you have given on rent? There is still no zakat on that, but there is zakat on the rent money if that increases the nisab. So let's say if a person is working abroad, he owns a house which is more than the value of nisab, and that house is on rent, he still does not have to pay zakat on that. He will have to pay zakat on the rent money if that rent money increases the nisab. But as for the house itself, they don't have to pay zakat. There is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let me double check whether it's Hazrat Rasulullah or Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, which said that different commodities will be checked separately. You cannot combine everything. Yes, it's by Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq. Hazrat Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said that Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq wrote to me that what was made compulsory by Allah's apostle regarding the payment of zakat. And he said, neither different types of properties may be taken together, nor the joint property may be split for the fear of paying more or receiving less zakat. So it is very clear. Let's say you have some gold, some jewelry, some money, etc. If the rates are different for them, you pay zakat on them separately. So the question was about house. If you own the house, there is no zakat. If that house has been given on rent, there is still no zakat on the house. But if the rent money increases zakat, increases the nisab, which is, as I said, as of this morning, it was around 222,000 peso, then you will pay zakat on that. Last question I want to cover about zakat is jewelry. Especially in our culture, in the Pakistan Indian culture, and also in the Philippines, I've noticed, people get gold and silver jewelry as wedding gifts, or when people come back from Saudi. Especially I've noticed our Filipino OFWs who are working in the Middle East, when they come back, they bring jewelry. So on jewelry, if that jewelry is under regular use, there is no zakat. But Hazrat Masih Maud has said, even then a person should pay zakat upon them out of the fear of Allah, because that is the to purify his wealth. Now, secondly is the jewelry that you do not wear throughout the year. you don't even wear once a year, then Hazrat Masih Maud has said you should pay zakat on that. What is the zakat on that? Same, 2.5%. Let's say your jewelry is total 90 grams of, if you total all of your necklace, earrings, etc., they equal 90 grams of gold. So you will pay on 90 grams of gold value. Either you can pay in the form of the jewelry itself, you can give the 2.5% of the jewelry, or you can calculate that based on money, cash value, and you can pay that cash value in zakat. Now, third option is that you have jewelry and you also let poor people borrow it when they have functions, wedding functions, etc. For that, again, the same, you don't have to pay zakat. It's not compulsory, but Hazrat Masih Maud has said that you should pay zakat upon those also out of the fear of Allah. So I have covered today, as far as zakat is concerned, the nisab of zakat, the cash value of zakat, house of zakat, and jewelry of zakat, and fitrana and fidya. So if there are any questions about any of these things, please message me directly or leave a comment under this video, and inshallah tomorrow's dars I can explain these things further. Jazakumullahu ta'ala asan jaza. Now this is the month of Ramadan, so please make an effort. Like I said, fitrana must be paid before Eid al-Fitr. So all of you should pay your fitrana. As I've already mentioned that the fitrana amount set by Jamaat is 100 peso. Inshallah, circular will be coming to you from Secretary Mal very soon. But I have already informed verbally many people that the fitrana, the rate is same as last year, 100 peso. Fidya, if you're missing any fast, you should pay your fidya also right away. Because again, the purpose of the fidya is to help poor people. Either you can directly feed the people, you can directly give the money to the people, or better, you give it to Jamaat and Jamaat will distribute. Okay, I gave you already an example that there are many people who are in need that you're not aware of. They will message me, or they will message your local missionary or their local president. So if we have all the fidya amount collected in one place, we can help them better. And lastly, zakat. I forgot to mention this. Zakat cannot be paid directly to any person. Zakat must be paid to the government, and in our case to the Jamaat, because there is no Islamic government. So zakat cannot be paid directly to a needy person. Zakat must also be paid to Jamaat. So please, there's 15 days or 14 days left in the month of Ramadan. Please pay your fitrana, please pay your fidya, and if zakat applies to you, please pay your zakat also. May Allah Ta'ala enable us to act upon these teachings of the Holy Quran and teachings of Islam. Ameen. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad wa barik wa sallim innaka hamidun majid. Jazakumullah.